a networking app. Yeah.
Okay, what about now?
What who is thinking? Oh my god.
No, the technology's not there yet.
Yeah.
Don't steal that.
Are you Russian? Yeah. I'm Bulgarian. Oh, that's
Hey everyone, thanks a lot for being here. Now we have the Fintech blockchain ICO panel. Let's say this panel is very highly experienced in the financial sector and various different realms of it. So maybe everyone could start up by explaining a little bit about themselves and how they got into the business that they do currently.
Good evening, everybody. Hello. Get used to this thing first. Let's see. I started out my career about a decade ago and got into the advertising world. Then I was also in the equity world, and through the equity world, I met my partners and we started the Peak and Spartan Race company, which is now global. And then I moved down to South America and lived all around there, and particularly in Argentina, I noticed inflation, which was something that I'd never really known about, or I'd read about it or something. And so down there, for example, when I went to Uruguay, they said to me, well, how do we know you're not a cocaine dealer, And maybe I was, right? But anyways, the bottom line is, in Argentina, you had 20% inflation. And so that was the first time I really saw that. And people were literally running across the borders with bags of cash. And so that got me really inspired when Bitcoin came out, and to create a wallet that would allow people to hold multi-currency balances, which I still think is going to be the future of banking. And through a series of events, I got into Fintech, and I'm doing what I'm doing now, which is OneFX Pay, and I'm sure it'll be explained later.
Hi, everybody. My name is Amy Wong. I'm the CEO of Bootstrap Legal. We are currently working on a project called SageWise, which basically the project basically is we are building dispute resolution infrastructure for smart contracts. My background is I'm a securities attorney by training. Started my career in the federal government doing international regulatory affairs and international trade policy. I've been general counsel at a startup. I have been partner at a law firm, and really the reason I got into the blockchain ICO space was because early last year I had a ton of people calling me, being like, hey, we are a lawyer for our ICO. Looked into it, and I thought there was a much more fundamental issue, which was, every ICO that went up last summer, got hacked in their first 15 minutes they were up for $2 or $3 million, and the founders just sat there and shrugged their shoulders, and there wasn't really anything that they could do. So, dug into the issue, found out that smart contracts are, in fact, not quite so smart. In fact, they have a lot of coding errors, security vulnerabilities, and the truth is the more complex you make your smart contract, the more parties may need to modify, amend, or terminate it. And so we're basically building a whole dispute resolution infrastructure around that, especially for enterprises, but also for all the consumers, in order to ensure transactional confidence in the blockchain space.
Hello, testing. I'm Sherry Kaiserman, and I was a poor girl from the Bronx who had a dysfunctional childhood. My mom died when I was 13, and my dad couldn't deal, so I was just a street kid. And I wanted to change my life, and so I moved out to Los Angeles after college and fell into Wall Street. So I had to live on New York time, living out here, waking up at 4 in the morning, and figured out how to be an equity research salesperson, which was talking about things that I had no idea about that were pretty complex, whether it was technology or electric utilities or biotech, and talk to portfolio managers at Fidelity and hedge funds, and in a way that was just relaying the important criteria of why they would want to invest in a stock. And so I got good at telling stories in a simplified manner. And I was there for 10 years, and on Wall Street, like they do in many other industries, my firm wanted to follow the herd and move to San Francisco. So after 10 years of living in Los Angeles with a great support system, and very happy, and I was married, and I had 2 kids, and my client base was in LA, I was not about to pick up and go to San Francisco. And our weather is much better here. So I was determined to make something work in LA, and I met Gary Wedbush, and I don't know if anyone's seen the Wedbush sign on the building downtown, but in 1999, it was a firm that Gary had just come. His father owned the firm since 1950, or built the firm since 1950, and he wanted to build the equities, the capital markets side of the business, instead of just a retail dealing with individuals. And so Gary started it, and a year later, he hired me to be head of sales, head of no one. And I ended up building the whole thing, and was head of equities and building around their equities division for 16 years. And through that time, it was very obvious to me back in around 2009 that the future was not bright for Wall Street jobs. And as head of equities, I needed to figure out, how do we add value? How can we be innovative? God help me, what can we do different than everybody is doing? So I was desperately trying to seek out different things that were interesting and could be valuable to professional money managers who were running mutual funds and hedge funds, and information that somehow would be helpful to their ability to pick stocks. And so when in 2013, in 2013, I started, can you hear me? I started hearing about Bitcoin, and someone asked me if I wanted to have someone come in and educate me on the topic. I said, absolutely. And so I invited a few people from my team, and we listened to the pitch on what it was and the story of how it became and what it could be. And it was right after that meeting that my Fintech analyst and I looked at each other and said, this is for real. And he asked me, can I publish research on this? And I said, go and be first. So we were the first Wall Street firm that published research on the topic of Bitcoin and blockchain. And at the end of 2015, I left my role as head of equities to just be entrepreneur in residence at the firm and try to figure out new revenue streams to create for the firm. And in the past year, I've just fully been focused on blockchain technology, helping our Wedbush asset management side to invest, and I got the firm involved in Bitcoin back in 2014 and doing some other things with it. So that's how I got into the industry. But Friday, after 18 years, my last day of Wedbush. It's a new era. Hi, Howard's is. Oh no, that's not Howard. Is this better? Thank you. And so it's my last day, and I am co-founding a company in Santa Monica that's a blockchain-focused company. We have an investment fund, an advisory business, and a retained search for blockchain talent management. There's 5 of us. That's a lot of things to do. It's already up and running as of January 2nd, and I join full-time on February 5th. I'm very excited.
Hi everyone. Hi everyone, I'm Rob Vickery. I am the general partner and co-founder of Stage Venture Partners. We're a VC fund based here in Los Angeles. We're a seed stage fund, typically investing in kind of more B2B enterprise software. My background started off in Fintech in the UK. I became a graduate at Lloyd's Bank, and I was part of a startup within there that created a new distribution channel for a 500-year-old brand, which is not an easy thing to do, but I was one of 4 people that started to white label Europe's largest bank and allow third-party brands to sell banking products and credit cards and loans and insurance through their own brand. So one of our first partnerships was a certain grocery store called Sainsbury's. So we created Sainsbury's Bank, which was a lot of fun, working out how to position pet insurance next to dog food and stuff like that. It was a lot of fun. Anyway, moved over here, was North America director for Lloyd's for a period of time, doing kind of major corporate investments into large pointless city entertainment properties, things like that. Became in love with the LA tech scene, which I can tell is alive here tonight. I can smell weed in the air, there's booze around, and there's other stuff, so we're definitely an LA tech scene. I became a bit of an angel investor, and through some non-profit work that I ran, I used to run academies at various at-risk youth-based high schools. I met my co-founder, we made some investments, had a lot of fun doing it, and now we're on our second fund. We've done 10 investments in the last 12 months, not within blockchain. To be fair, I'm often put on these panels because I don't invest in blockchain. Not yet. It's probably a little early for me yet. Also, crypto, again, we're not quite sold on that yet. So I'm often used as a bit of Tinder for the VC versus ICO discussion, so I look forward to that. I'm sure it's going to happen. So yeah, that's kind of me, entrepreneur, investor, and happy to be here. So thanks.
Hey y'all, my name's Keller Crawford. I started out in New York as I guess I've always done the Flash front end stuff, the design, some of the architecture. I started out in the internet advertising industry and was publishing some properties, web properties, and just trying to get traffic and run that whole game. And made some money, went around the world, and create a lot of other tech and creative projects. And along the way, I had always, well, let me just say that on this panel I would represent sort of the consumer end of things. I make products for people. I've made a lot of art and things that I've touched. A handful of people in this room have probably seen in one form or another. But when I was on a project in Bali, I got hit by a motorcycle. I was on my motorcycle. I got hit head on by a van. And that leveled me physically, emotionally, professionally, and for the first time financially in my adult life, I didn't have any means to earn, and it drained my savings. So I had this engineer mind that I had cultivated over my lifetime, and I started looking at this problem of how do you make a financial product for people who have unpredictable earning patterns. And we're seeing that a lot with the gig economy and people who have multi-threaded income. There's just, the more general and more superficial the financial product, the more people you're leaving out of it. So I set out to create a financial product that would really treat users as people, as individuals. And that's what Paisley is, and that's why we were voted the #1 fintech company by the LA fintech community a couple months ago. So I'm making an app that allows you to make simple rules for the way that you want to save, the way that you want to pay your mom back, maybe even the way that you want to invest in crypto. But the way that money moves from point A to point B on the internet, you should be able to create simple rules that say, on the first of the month, if I have this much in my account, then let that plan flow. And if I don't, then just let it sleep. So that also works for donations. It's just a dynamic system. So I don't know if you guys have ever seen anything out there that would let you take 10% of your income from your Uber earnings and put it to a charity. It just doesn't exist. So I'm creating that that tool. So I'm up here representing personalization in fintech.
Great. Love your mission. So I'm Howard Marks. I run Start Engine. I come from the video game industry. And my mission here is to help entrepreneurs achieve their dreams. I help them raise capital. I've been doing this since 2015. Prior to that, I was also an accelerator. We invested in about 60 companies in LA. And most of them went out of business, by the way, because they couldn't get the capital they needed. They didn't fit the VC model in most cases. And so they just got discouraged and they decided to quit. And I felt that was not a good thing, that entrepreneurs should be given up as much opportunity as possible. And also we need to remove access and the barriers that exist to capital. We need to give people access to capital so they can build their businesses. So Start Engine is raising money for companies. We have about 100 companies on our platform right now. In 2016, we raised money for 10 companies. Last year, about 100. This year will be about 500. And I knew about Bitcoin and crypto for a while, but I discovered the ICO business last year. And especially when the SEC came in and started complaining about what was going on. And I decided, hey, maybe I can help the ICO business get out of the shadows and apply what I learned from using the Jobs Act for the ICO industry. So that's what I've done. So we launched that last year. We're starting to do ICOs right now. It's very controversial, but we have a lot of great ideas, we think, to help.
So I'll give you guys a quick little prep on fintech. So some of you that are newer to it, I would say fintech is broken into 4 major areas. So fintech is broken into 4 major areas, just to help you guys understand and not get confused with some of the panelists, because each of them are in various different sectors. The first major area is the banking sector, and I kind of separate it primarily based on the regulatory bodies involved in the U.S. Other countries, a little bit different, but in the U.S., it's basically broken down into 4 major areas. So that you got the banking side, the currency side, the real estate side, and the securities side. So each of these panelists kind of will have a different area or issues that go on. So my next question is, how did you survive some of the disruptions going through your industry, either in the past or currently? Basically explain to everyone, some of the issues that you go through, because fintech is very highly regulated. It's probably one of the most regulated industries I've ever come across. And each of the participants here probably experience things differently from each other, primarily because of the 4 different regulatory areas.
Well, I would say that the best way to survive disruption is to be a disruptor yourself. And so that's how I've tried to be, and that's how I'm going to continue to try to be.
How we survive disruption. I think it's difficult to say because I feel like a lot of people up here are the disruptors. So maybe we have a skewed perspective, right? But it's just staying ahead of the curve and making sure, change is inevitable. So long as you're like 10 steps ahead of it, then I think you'll be good. You probably have a good perspective.
I have a lot of stories in everything, but with disruption. So I entered Wall Street in 1989. And I would say the first disruption was being in an environment, a Wall Street trading desk, and then having the Anita Hill trial go on, and that really changed the course toward political correctness. So first of all was the raunchy trading room, where then it was fun. I mean, I was 21 and I thought that was fun, and I didn't realize that sexual harassment. And then all of a sudden you start learning that, these things are not okay, and we need to change. And it was very interesting watching this evolve, and it's still very interesting watching it evolve. But it is an evolution because the times were it was different, and what was acceptable then is not acceptable now. And then came Elliot Spitzer, where he ruined the party between banking and research. Banking was in charge of really had, or not in charge, but they had a lot of say over what research analysts could make. And research analysts were starting to make a lot of money because the IPO markets were booming, and all these firms with good banking departments needed the help of the analysts to win the deals. And so there's a famous case with Merrill Lynch where the banker said to the analyst, here, can you pick up this stock? It's a public company, and they're going to do a secondary, and I need you to put a buy rating on it, initiate coverage, and tell everybody how much you like it. And the analyst in email wrote back and said, I wouldn't put my grandmother's money in this, I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole, whatever he said. And next thing you know, there's a buy rating on this stock. Initiation report with a buy rating. And so they found lots of things like that. So regulation a lot of times is good because you start doing things that just are not appropriate, and because it's just what you do, everyone does it, and that's not okay. And so that put a Chinese wall or a barrier between research and banking, and now if they ever want to talk to each other, they need a chaperone in the room. But also the payment situation changed, and banking could no longer have influence over research analysts' compensation. And so compensation started going down because they weren't sharing as much. And that started taking the industry for a downturn on the sell side. But then they also started looking at, well, how much the sell side is charging in commissions for people to trade. And if any of you have your money in a mutual fund or a hedge fund and you're paying them, why are they paying Wall Street for research and all this stuff when they're supposed to be doing the research? But, you got to imagine there's 100 heads are better than one head, and there is value that comes from people giving you advice on things that they're just focused on versus one person that's looking at a lot of different things. So in any case, the commission started contracting because there was so much scrutiny over how much investing firms were paying Wall Street that the amount that they paid per trade started going down. So that started lessening the pool, and if you're not getting enough in commission, you can't pay your people as much as you were. And then came electronic trading, which drove the commissions down even further. The cost of technology was driving the cost down further. And then came ETFs, which was passive investing, and that created a new way where you didn't have to invest in a mutual fund. You can invest in a kind of like a tradable mutual fund right there that was liquid, and it was much cheaper. And so the amount of money that was available to earn as commissions contracted significantly. And so there's just been one disruption after another for Wall Street. And that's why I said in 2009, it was just clear that anyone who was used to making a lot of money like we were is just going to feel really bad about only making, I won't even say it. And then, you have these young kids who are excited about coming up and getting in the industry, and they're thrilled to make a lot of money that's half of what you're making. And so it was very interesting watching all of this, but it was clear that new products or new clients or new something needed to take place, and now there's even more disruption where they're really separating research and trading, and when you do a trade, it has to just be for that trade. You're not paying for research and certainly not the U.S. Open or the Super Bowl that you got taken to by the broker. And so, one bit quickly, we have an hour for this panel. So, so with electronic trading, when the traders were all afraid about what do I do with people going to want to use humans anymore, and all the traders wanted to avoid it. And it was really great. I commend Gary Wedbush, who said, this is coming. Electronic trading is coming, and the contraction and commissions are coming, and if you want to just wait for someone else to do it and then eat your lunch, go for it. But we're not going to be a firm that just sits back and waits. If someone's going to do it, we might as well be the ones. So we definitely got involved in trying to be a disruptor as well.
Okay, great. Disruption can occur at various levels. Now, when you look at cryptocurrencies and look at any kind of new technology, the best place to think about the future is to look to the past. And when you consider about 300-400 years ago, the Dutch East India Trading Company, many centuries operated in the same way as a cryptocurrency does today. It was decentralized, there was not a security. It became security. Now the question that lies with regards to Bitcoin and any of the other kind of cryptocurrencies is, when will that happen? It will happen. And when it does happen, then the question is like, do you want to disrupt what's inevitable, or do you want to disrupt somewhere else along the value chain? And I would prefer people to think about disrupting somewhere else. I think that when I was in Fintech, what we did was to try to disrupt the UX and the kind of customer acquisition channels. That there is where you're not going up against compliance. I used to be the chief compliance officer for Lloyds Bank in North America, and I can tell you, it was a job I hated. I mean, it was a job where I was regulated by British regulators as well as American regulators, as well as federal, as well as California state. And they are paid to say no. Compliance people are paid to say no, and there's a reason for that. So I think that disruption can occur in different places. Don't fight compliance. We see a lot of fintech. I'd love to invest in fintech. I see a lot of fintech companies come to us, but none of them have really solved the question of, okay, who's handling compliance for you? 99% of the time the answer is, we have a lawyer doing it. Not the answer we want to hear as a VC fund. You've got to have someone in-house who's done this before, or you've done this before. So, don't fight the regulators. It's coming, it's fine. Work around it. But think about disrupting somewhere else in the value chain. That would be my opinion.
It kind of drives me a little bit crazy when people make products, when engineers make products for themselves without thinking about other people. As a user, it drives me nuts because I'm sitting there going, why can't I do this? It's just so obvious. Some of that's compliance. Some of that's because there's a very good reason. Some of it's because you haven't spoken to your customers. So if you want to keep an edge on disruption, I would say stay in touch with your customers. Make products for people. If somebody's doing something better for you, then you should stay good at what you do, because there's going to be somebody you're serving, and just serve them well. Don't try to be everything. But your product and product creation should always be a conversation with the people that are stuck with it on the user end. So as long as that's a fluid conversation, as long as that's a fluid development plan, then I think you're going to survive.
I agree with Rob. Compliance is coming. Regulation, because the SEC chair just had a beautiful week last week, and this week actually. On Monday, had a big speech about it, trying to warn everybody that they're going to come after anyone who violates securities laws. And then on Thursday, I had an op-ed on the Wall Street Journal, a guy called Jay Clayton, pretty smart guy. And I completely agree. It's going to be difficult, I think, for a lot of companies to deal with, unfortunately. But you have to decide which side you want to be. We all have the right to vote in this country, and that's a right we own. And we elect governments, and those governments create regulations. So we have to decide which side we want to be, or we can move to Puerto Rico. Well, actually, that's the U.S. too. We have to move to Haiti. Haiti, that's good. And then, then you can exercise whatever rights you want there. But the truth is, it could be a good thing for the industry, but it's something that is going to happen. So I agree with that.
All right, so maybe explain to some of the people how blockchain, crypto ledgers are affecting your industry, because I would say it's affecting pretty much every sector of the fintech side of just different types of crypto ledgers. You know, it could be completely centralized. You know, are you being prepared for it anyhow? Are you going with it? Do you have any product plans for it? You know, I know each of you have a different, you know, thing on it.
Well, certainly Bitcoin and blockchain. So my industry is basic. Well, I run an enterprise software. So so OneFX Pay is an enterprise software company. We provide a banking and e-commerce platform, particularly for B2B payments and transfers and things. And so, absolutely, blockchain and crypto is big in that. Ripple, of course, is a big name. They're working with the banks. And Ripple is, of course, a centralized coin, and it has a lot of adoption, or at least testing and whatnot. I particularly am philosophically more inclined toward the decentralized projects. So my favorite project, for example, is BitShares, which is the leading decentralized exchange. It does about $50 million in volume per day. And so when I look at blockchain and crypto projects, I'm really looking for what's actually being used and what actually has real use cases. And so right now there are 1,000 crypto coins or something like that. Many of them, for example, are currencies. Now, why is one currency going to be used over another, for example, right? Bitcoin is a currency, so to speak. Why would, quote, rad coin start being used, right? You know, if you're looking at things to invest in, for example. So when I'm looking at the space, I'm always looking at use cases and, real world applications. And so things like the supply chain are being disrupted, international payments are being disrupted, identity verification, loan, credit scoring. These are all being disrupted and are interesting. And a lot of other people say some things too.
I agree. Today I think you're hard pressed to find an industry that hasn't been disrupted by the internet or e-commerce or something like that. I think that's what blockchain is going to do for the future. I mean, they're literally rebuilding the internet on the blockchain right now. I in particular come from the legal industry, and I got to tell you, a lot of lawyers are scared of AI and blockchain and all these things coming down the pipeline. The smart ones are lining up to try and get in front of the wave.
On Wall Street, I think they're going to see extreme efficiencies from blockchain in the back office. On the blockchain, trading equals settlement. So you'll end up seeing quicker trading and less counterparty risk and less capital needed for longer periods of time, and I think it's going to cause a lot of efficiencies and probably the loss of a lot of back office jobs. But in terms of everyday life for a research analyst, salesperson, trader, they're not feeling it just yet. although CNBC is talking about crypto every day. And I think it's annoying some of them because it's not what they do. And a lot of attention is being taken off and money is going toward crypto. And I mean, with Charles Schwab, Bitcoin's trading more than Charles Schwab is. So I think that's telling.
Yeah, decentralization is a very appealing concept. I think societally we're all very gung-ho to decentralization, and I'm with you on that. Can't really comment too much about ledgers and stuff like that, but if I remember right, where you've got n number of nodes and you've got n number of entries on a ledger, and that equals n number of transactions, that means anything could go wrong. So, the lady shaking her head means maybe I'm making the math wrong. But what I'm just trying to say is that decentralized markets and decentralized processes take time. When you think about energy consumption of Bitcoin mining, so when the very first Bitcoin was launched, you could data mine on a MacBook. And today, the entire processing used to mine for any crypto-related currencies, the energy consumption is equal to the output of the entire country of Denmark. Now, when we're in a planet today where we have lots of global warming issues and Paris treaties and accords with people stepping in and out and everything else, I think blockchain needs to become a lot more efficient, and it needs to work out how it's going to do that. Quantum computing might help, AI, machine learning, deep learning might help, but there's some fundamental big problems that need to be solved before we can get any much bigger.
I'm pretty excited about how insane it is right now with all the cryptos popping up. It's a breeding ground it's like a Darwinian breeding ground for new tech. And so one of the things that's interesting is that a lot of it is, you can't really patent a lot of this. It's just, and if you try to, then somebody's going to get it and implement it way before you. That works. Okay, so enter the regulators. Thank God. Like this of all moments is a moment for regulators. Like we actually, it's dogpiled everybody and their mom trying to create a crypto, and there's a lot of people putting their hard-earned money into this and then losing their assets. So there's a lot of danger happening out there too. But there's something exciting about the Wild West nature of it. And I think what we're going to see is, as the regulators step up and find some way to put some reins on this thing, we're going to increase the difficulty to have an ICO or to create anything that's tradable. And so people are going to have to make some things that are a little bit more utilitarian. And what I'm really excited about is the modularization of services that's going to come from that. So, for example, I'd love to see a compliance coin or a compliance company that just is, where everybody goes for their ICOs and they actually conduct the ICO through their coin. If anybody wants to do this idea, please do it, because I want to put some fiat into it. But that's the kind of thing I think that we're going to see. There's like Polyswarm. I'm really excited about what they're doing. They're giving bounty coins to people that can break systems for security. That's something that benefits everybody. When there's better threat against hackers, the world's a little bit of a better, safer place. I think embracing it with a healthy skepticism for my app, again, for Paisley, what I do is I allow you to tell us how you want your money to flow. One thing I've been talking to my team about is partnering or just utilizing the Coinbase API to make that an endpoint for what we do. And what we're actually working on is cloning our platform and making that project called CoinBelt, so that you can make simple rules to stream money into Coinbase. when you have it. When you don't have money, it doesn't tap you. So that's something that's on our docket, and so just looking for tech assistance on that. But I'm super excited about the moment, and we definitely have plans to utilize the blockchain.
And it's very cool. I actually did file a patent for securities tokens, and so I guess people are going to copy me. It's okay, no big deal. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's the first time I filed a software patent, so we'll see if it works. Not sure.
So maybe explain to some of the crowd how you're positioning yourself for growth within your market. I'll say some of the areas are growing very rapidly right now, especially in the crypto side. But you know, what are you doing to kind of do your growth plan?
So what we are, OneFX Pay is a banking and e-commerce platform. And so over the past several years, forward thinkers have written articles about what if Amazon got into banking? What if Facebook got into banking? Well, nobody wrote an article about what if the bank got into the marketplace? Or what if the bank got into CRM software? And so that's what I've done, is I've created a bank where you log into your bank, and it's also basically Alibaba or eBay. And so Amazon.com might get into banking, but they rely on their 5 to 10% fees that they charge merchants. We're a bank, we've got a built-in marketplace, and we've eliminated merchant fees completely, almost, down to 10 cents. So that's what we're bringing to the table. As far as the crypto aspect of it, we're going to enable freelancers and merchants around the world to accept over 50 cryptocurrencies in about 60 days. So we're definitely excited about the world, the space of payments, and where things are going. I personally think that there's an incredible opportunity in the world today with the merging of the various technologies. Particularly, I'm talking about behavioral and data analytics with financial data. So, you know, like the ad tech world, behavioral world, financial world, all of these things are coming together. And it's just a great time for entrepreneurs and developers out there with all the different APIs to really start and create really cool things. So we're excited for growth. That's what we're doing. And
so I come from the legal industry. We're very lucky. Well, I guess I'm very lucky because there are not many attorneys out there who are entrepreneurial and understand blockchain and willing to leave their law firm jobs. The interesting thing about dispute resolution for smart contracts right now is that while there are arbitration and dispute resolution projects out there to solve the problem that we're trying to solve, they're mostly projects run by crypto anarchists who have never actually resolved a dispute. So having a little experience, I think, actually helps. Most of them come from a perspective where they're like, oh, we can solve justice with crowd juries and game theory, and I'm like, this is really interesting. If justice were as simple as game theory and a couple of algorithms, I think we would have solved it a couple millennia ago. But, Plato's been writing about it, and so have a lot of other philosophers, and we're still trying to figure it out. What we're trying to do, is trying to bring a much more practical perspective, I think, to dispute resolution the legal industry in the blockchain space. And what that means is, specifically looking at the concerns and needs of our users and molding our solution accordingly. And to the extent that means, having certain aspects that are centralized and other aspects that are decentralized, that's fine, because I don't think everything in the world needs to be decentralized.
So the company that I'm co-founding is Macola, and it has 3 parts, and it's all to support the build-out of the blockchain ecosystem. The first one is a fund so that we can help entrepreneurs that are building disruptive technologies or enabling technologies that can enable other companies to introduce blockchain to their business models. We want to support them and we want to help them. And we have an advisory business that can work with the blockchain, our investment companies, and help them do everything from build and grow their product. And the other part of the advisory business is focused on corporate America, established businesses that don't know what blockchain really is, how do they utilize it, they're hearing about it, they need help. And I think, and we would like to connect the dots and help corporate America know who the partners are that they should be working with and understand how they can utilize it and help them conceive an idea, design it, build it, grow it. And the third part is, something we learned from the internet, the .com days, is that just like we're seeing now, capital really isn't the issue, but the issue is talent. And we have a retained search. We're trying to build the largest blockchain talent database. I think this time around also it's going to be even more difficult than the .com days with talent, because so many of the engineers that are around today already working are those that got into Bitcoin and Ethereum early, and we're seeing them retire. And so not only do you not have enough talent, but the talent you have is actually saying, I don't need to work anymore. So we're trying to help.
So I can answer this question from, I suppose, a portfolio perspective. I mean, a VC fund grows by making more investments and closing more funds. So our equation is pretty straightforward. Some of our founders, most of them, about a third of our fund is either raised or going into a Series A round of capital right now. And for them to get to that level, what they're doing is going out and getting about 3 or 4 customers who are either on an annual or a multi-year contract. It's really, really important for Series A investors to be able to see some sort of annual recurring revenue. Another thing they're doing, positioning themselves for growth, is hiring really great people. And for those of you who are hiring people who are trying to build out a team, surely know this, but never underestimate how hard it is to hire people, especially really great talent, especially salespeople. So as a fund ourselves, we're creating our own kind of private dinners and networking groups, cultivating and capturing the very best people from some of the best tech companies in LA. Not poaching them, of course, that would be totally inappropriate. We're trying to poach them for our portfolio, and doing things like that. So hiring the right people, getting some great customers in place, and then making sure you've got enough runway, because you need to raise enough capital, not for 3 months, not for 6, but for somewhere between 12 to 18 months. So give yourself enough time for enough shots on target. So we're finding that our companies that are doing that are succeeding, but also they're building up a network of the VCs that they want to pitch to. So one of our latest deals is just doing its $15 million Series A right now. We introduced them to about 60 other VC funds that we work with, mostly in Silicon Valley and some here. But you've got to get that list up to about 60 or 70 or 100 names that you can get out and pitch to. Multiple partners at the same fund is fine, but if you're out there thinking about raising capital and not doing it through an ICO, which is a very different process that I don't know much about, but if you are going the VC route, then just build that network up, and just try and make sure you've got enough positive performance metrics to show people that you're on the right way. Too often we see lots of startups come to us with a very fully featured product. You don't need that. You need to have a product that is able to deliver revenue and deliver value to your clients and their customers. So don't spend too long building out beautiful products. We've seen some companies pitch us who have had a product in development for 3 years, and then they're now raising a seed round. You should have done this 2 years ago with the first iteration, still worked just fine. So, just think along those lines. But try and get 3 or 4 customers that are paying well. That will bode you extremely well.
Really good advice. What was the question? Was growth? Yeah. Okay. So I would just I would. Culture is really important to me. Making sure that the people that you work with are treated really well with respect and are rewarded in a good way. I always think that making sure that stakes are divvied up in a good way. Investing is there is always good. So when you find the talent, hanging on to them. I also, just as a general practice, I just really believe in supporting the ecosystem throughout, wherever you are. I'm constantly throwing resources to these VC friends of mine when I know that they're looking for somebody who's really good at marketing. I know a really good marketing person who's ready for hire. I actually have a few to throw to you. And also tech resources. When somebody's not a right fit for me, I'm passing them over to a friend. So that kind of karma, it really does wonders for. It just keeps coming back to me, and it's just something I do because that's the kind of guy I am. But I've found that it has sustained me in ways that are intangible ways that have just kept us going against all odds.
Yeah, that's good. I love your perspective on this. I think, I don't know how many here of you know VCs and can be introduced to VC, but they usually don't invest unless they're introduced by someone they trust. And the way they've been working today, they invest in about 4,000 companies a year. And it's an entire disgrace. The whole industry of VCs is horrible for most, but not for very few. So if you're a white male from Stanford, you're going to do very well. But everybody else, get in line, you're not going to get any money. And I find it disrespectful, disgraceful, and it needs to change. Now, it turns out that ICO industry, whether you like it or not, and it's not regulated, and they do all sorts of crazy things, are introducing this notion that the people, the crowd, have a voice, and that they can vote on the idea. So whether you have a gender that is not in the right place, or a race that is not in the right place, or religion, or whatever you are, it doesn't matter. Because you see people who are receiving capital on ICOs who come from all sorts of demographics. And they are entrepreneurs too. And they have the right to produce and become successful. And I think that our country needs to take a page from that and learn so that there's more access to capital. It's not only Stanford graduates and white men, it's also others. And that diversity will help us become more successful as a country and get more opportunities. So the idea that someone is going to get discouraged to start their business because they don't fit the right mold is just unbelievably unfair. It's so cruel to people. What you can't change is you can change your ambitions, your views, your ideas, but you can't change who you are. So I find it ridiculous. Anyway, I think the ICO, I've been fascinated about this industry because they've raised about $4 billion last year. A lot of people will criticize the industry, but I will say this. They've introduced the notion that if you have a great idea and you have a crowd that wants to invest and there's a liquidity path that is instant or very close to instant, people are really willing to invest their money. And that is a huge, extraordinary new idea.
So I'm going to do the big R word. Within this industry, it's almost equivalent to the other one, but regulation. What are your thoughts? What are you guys doing?
My take on regulation is outsource it if you can. And I've dealt with regulation. I've had FDIC audits. We do regulation. We have a KYC process. Everybody who uses our platform, we know their identities. So I've been there, done that. We take it seriously, absolutely. We've also dealt with fraud. So, yeah, it's something you got to deal with. Outsource it if possible. What was your question? Is that it? So with the regulation, I mean, I think regulation is necessary, certainly to keep scams out, right? but there's always going to be scams, and I think what we're going to see coming down in the next couple of years is that regulators can't really control this, and hopefully they can, because some of us want to be this decentralized, and some of us want to be unregulated or deregulated. So I'm hoping that the regulators can't keep up with the technology, and yeah, that's what I'm hoping.
Keeping in mind that there's a video on. So putting on my securities attorney hat for a second, the regulations have always been there. What is not there right now is more clarity on how the regulations apply to all the novelty that you're seeing, right? And, a lot of these ICOs are fundraising schemes. I will say, though, that, for the past year in this industry, I have never seen such incredible creativity from clients. I'm not taking clients, but, people keep calling me and emailing me and kind of pitching me. But, man, the creative, suddenly it's like the entire tech community knows the Howey test, which was this obscure test that no one actually really cared about. Now everyone seems to know it. They're all reading about it. They're all trying to find ways to find loopholes around it. What I'll leave you is just with this thought. And as a former general counsel of a startup that was one of the first to use regulations from the Jobs Act, one of the crowdfunding rules. What I will say is that novelty from a legal perspective is very expensive. And so right now, everyone's out there trying to ICO and whatever, they're after the money. And, I'll just say that one must weigh the costs and benefits of going in certainly more novel directions. From a legal perspective, it can be more expensive. From a business perspective, it can be more expensive, right? To the extent you're tokenizing your business, you run up against a lot more security issues. Ethereum virtual machine is not for poor startups, for poor people. And you're bringing a lot more complexity into what you're doing. So I'm not saying don't ICO. I'm just saying, spend a good amount of time thinking about whether it's the right decision for you.
I think 2018, we will see a lot more coming from the regulators, but they are not caught up with the technology, and they are trying to understand and learn. I actually was part of a presentation from the SEC on Monday, and it came up how there seems to be more securities lawyers than ever, because lawyers are just everybody wants to get into the ICO business, and a lot of them are not giving very good advice. And people are, and I commend the SEC and the rest of the regulators for not banning everything, and they're trying to let creativity happen, but they are getting more and more scrutinizing over what is happening, and I think they're going to, some of the enforcement actions that they've done have just been pretty passive, but I think we will see some harsher penalties coming, and I think specifically, there's just so many issues that they're dealing with at the state level, the money service business. Who's in charge of regulating this? Is it the CFTC? Is it the SEC? Is it a currency? Is it a commodity? Is it a token? Is it? There's a lot of, or all the above, and there's a lot to figure out. But I do think that more clarity will be coming, and they're really calling for outreach. So anyone in the industry that wants to give some help on some how they can look at things, they're very open to it, which I think is a good thing.
So there's not been an institution on this planet since the dawn of time that has not ended up being regulated. I would look to South Korea and look at what they're doing with regards to what's happening there. This is not going to go away. Now, if you want to keep fighting it, please do. I think it's very cool. But this will forever remain on the fringes if you do so. For this to succeed, there are 40 million Coinbase wallets. Now, the frequency of use is everything in technology, right? You know, you can have, look at VR, there's 6-7 million of those pointless, horrible headsets out there. No one uses them. And it's the same with the Coinbase wallet. We need frequency of use, engagement, for this to become a wide-scale, consumer-adopted platform. Right now it isn't. And regulation will allow you to do that. Don't fight it, please. I'm sorry, don't outsource it. I'm sorry to disagree with you, both of course. But please don't outsource it because it will ruin your business. Secondly, Howard, I'm going to have to pick up on this because you know my opinions on this. But you've made some very broad, very sweeping comments about venture capital, and I just wanted to tell you a little bit about how we invest. So, 33.3% recurring of my portfolio are women founders, and all of those are also the CEOs of their companies. 70% of our portfolio are from immigrant founders. That's a problem this country seems to have right now, including myself. I'm one of those founders. I'm an immigrant. We've got 40% of our portfolio are veterans from either the US Air Force, from the military, from the Marines, or for the Israeli Defense. And I think actually 66% of our portfolio are ethnic minorities. So we don't give a shit whether you're from Stanford, Cambridge, Oxford, Harvard, or, you know, fucking Lady Mead Community School like myself in England. We really care about you being the right person with the right idea and launching the thing at the right time. Don't care what your colour is. In fact, I wish that was not an issue. I wish we could just invest in really bloody good entrepreneurs. But this is an issue because this is brought up a lot, and it makes me extremely irate. So I apologise for my tone, but it bothers me. So let's cut it out. Yes, some of my colleagues do have issues like that, but we're trying to make a change. And broad stereotypes do not help. Thank you.
Yeah, there are some great VCs I've met as well around LA that are investing from a good place. I feel you. I feel you too. Unfortunately, well, I mean, VC is it's not a democratic thing. It's an entity that exists for a purpose, and unfortunately, people's formulas differ. And I think that there's an exciting opportunity for a more democratic platform to come into being, and that's what makes the ICO so cool. You know, I've been since I started. I mean, I don't know if I said this earlier, but I spent the better whole of my life just actively avoiding everything finance and everything business and everything contractual. Like I have like a blur filter I can put on. Like for information. I also can do it graphically. If I see something on the internet I don't want to see, it just turns on. But I had to educate myself in order to be able to carry the ball on what I'm doing now. And you know, since the beginning, I was writing to the National ACH Association and calling every compliance officer I could from every bank and talking to VCs and you know, just like this compliance thing, regulatory stuff just hovering over me, just threatening to just stamp me out of existence at any moment. But I have to say, this again, the moment that we're in with the crypto frenzy, it really shows us, it really highlights the need for regulation, and I look forward to it coming into resolution, so that it can legitimize it further and make it more accessible to people, protect people. I mean, right now we're seeing, you know, there's Binance, Bittrex, Bitfinex, all of these bigger exchanges. What they're trying to do, that I've noticed, is they're trying to vet the coins that they're letting on their platform. And if they go through some process, I think that they're also just holding a bounty and making them pay a huge amount of money to get on their platform too. But there's some vetting there. It's not regulatory, but when these entities misbehave, they get booted off of some of these platforms. And we're seeing some of the decentralized platforms as well, like Ether Delta, which is just wild, absolute, like it's gangster up on there. So people can lose their ass on Ether Delta because there's coins like, well, I'm not going to mention any names because I'd like to make it home, but there are these coins out there that are just, I mean, you can fork Ethereum with some buddies, call it Ethereum mystery, and you know, pump your coin, get listed at the top of the growth on Coin Market Cap in that day, and have a bunch of noobs come up and just throw money in and lose it as quick as that. It's scary, and so there's a real need for regulation right now. If there ever was one, so I look forward to it coming into just give us a little bit of sanity, so that we can actually. I think it's going to be really good for the whole ecosystem. I think it's going to be really good for all the legit coins, all the legit cryptos. It's just going to give us a little bit of structure that we can go into the future with.
I appreciate Rob's comment because his numbers that he just cited you are great. All the rest from the industry is awful. Anyway, if you look at the statistics, they're horrible. Anyway, so we have our own chief compliance officer in-house. We're registered with the SEC. We're a member FINRA. I have a Series 763. I'm now going to do my 2479, so I'm going to be part of the club. I don't know why, but okay, that's how it works. But I have to tell you, regulation, it's amazing how people are so naive when they say it's not clear what the rules are. This is so wrong. Of course they're clear. They just don't want it to be the rules applied to them. But the rules are extremely clear. I mean, you can take any industry you want and apply any rule you want, and then here we go. You set the rules. And so I disagree when people say rules are unclear. I say just read the rules and then follow them. That's all.
All right, so now you guys heard about the regulation side. We're going to transition to the next thing, almost right there, the big F. So with the regulation, I'll say most of the regulation is primarily there for the massive amounts of fraud that goes on. So within each of these individual sector, it could be anything from the authentication side to AML, FinCEN, maybe explain to the audience, some of the things that you're dealing with on the fraud side.
Well, first I'll just say in regards to outsourcing compliance, the reason why you want to outsource compliance is because otherwise you won't have a startup. They'll just be spending your money on the bureaucrats to push the paper. So if you want to have an actual startup and you're on a bootstrap budget, definitely outsource your compliance to people who you can trust and who do a good job. As far as the regulation goes, I just want to touch and continue on that. I'm not big into the regulation. I think the biggest thing that will get crypto into the mainstream, it's a very simple feature. It's called the forgot password feature. There's no way, in my opinion, that crypto can reach a mainstream audience if people lose their holdings when they forget or lose their passwords. You can't have a business with billions of dollars and oops, the account lost the password. Or, oh, honey, I lost the retirement this evening. So once they figure that out, I think that'll help get crypto much more widespread adoption. As far as regulation goes, yes and no, good and bad. You know, I'm really into the innovation and people doing things. I think, you know, we had Enron on the New York Stock Exchange, right? So things happen even in a regulated environment, but regulation does tend to stifle innovation. As far as the fraud goes, I've dealt with fraud, and so I've dealt with that in terms of ACH chargeback fraud, and you know, all I can say is it sucks, man. You know, I got a phone call that said we're shutting you down and you owe us $30,000. You know, that's like, you know, I mean, you know, you don't want to get that phone call, and but it happens. And so if you're in the fintech industry, you got to be prepared for that. And some of that is doing compliance. Some of that is, you know, your processes, how you set things up. And you know, if you have a legal team, you can go after them. In our particular case, what we learned and what I found in my experience was we were attacked by basically a gang, and what these people, how they operate is each one of them will hit you for basically like $1,000, right? And so that's how they operate, because they know that if they take you for $1,000, nobody's going to come after them for $1,000. You know, if I hit you for 10, I might go after that guy. But $1,000 cost me $1,000 just to talk to the lawyer. So, you know, so that's how some of this financial tech fraud is going down. Is people are hitting you like, you know, knife style, you know, and they'll bleed you to death. But so fraud is definitely out there, and especially if you're in the fintech space, you've got to pay attention to it, because the laws, I believe, are much more on the consumer side and not on the business side. So, you know, if you know, you sold somebody to somebody, I think the ACH window, for example, it's like 60 days. They can come back for you 60 days later and say, hey, guess what? And then, you know, by then you've already spent that money, you paid your employees or what have you. So you've got to pay attention to your processes and how you're set up for fraud.
I'll speak on the issue of ICO fraud. There is definitely a lot of that going on right now. You know, I think Warren Buffett has a quote, be fearful when others are greedy. And the ICO space has certainly attracted a lot of greedy people who just see a very easy way to make money, right? If you come at it from an investor perspective, I would say, obviously, always do your due diligence. You wouldn't believe some of the incredible things we're seeing in the industry, right? You know, you see people going out there and making claims of, oh, the price of the coin is or token is guaranteed to rise, or you know, they'll say that they have some sort of partnership with some big company when in fact it's like, you know, maybe they're doing an informal pilot project together or something like that. So, you know, lots of exaggeration. They'll say, oh, we're going to list on an exchange by X date, when in fact they have no such agreement to ever list on an exchange. It's very difficult to get listed on an exchange. Make sure you compare the white paper to the actual terms of the smart contract, right? We're seeing a ton of smart contracts out there where, you know, whatever representations made in the white paper do not reflect what the smart contract says. So if it says, oh, our pre-sale people or our advisors have a 3-month holding period, that's not coming into the smart contract. These people can dump it whenever they want, right? So you want to make sure that they have a professional smart contract auditing firm, that the terms in the smart contract actually reflect what is represented in English on the white paper.
I don't have a ton of stories about fraud, but I'm just looking forward to what blockchain technology can bring to the world with respect to reducing fraud and relying on trusted, unalterable data. And you know, it amazes me how we give our credit card or checks with our account numbers right on it, and we have to trust that this intermediary is not going to do anything wrong and take that data, or that even if they're good, that their systems are not going to allow some hacker to get in and take the data. And I think that digital currencies and blockchain technology will go a long way in helping that and allowing people to control their data and only have to give what's necessary and not things that people don't need to see.
I suppose back in the day in the banking, fraud was is a real problem. And I think probably you and myself at Lloyd's and you at Webbush, we've probably done lots of AML courses, those online courses that we have to sit there. Yeah, it's the most dreary course you could ever do, but it's really important. And I think one of the biggest things that comes out from it is just really be aware about KYC and applying a lot of common sense to doing checks on your customers or people who are transacting on your platform. International transactions obviously attract a lot more potential for fraud and risk than others, and domestic. From some fintech startups we've seen some horror stories have been, customers' account numbers and bank account numbers being stored on Google Sheets. It's a good idea. So just apply a lot of common sense to this, and if you can avoid touching people's personal information, such as social security numbers or bank account numbers, please do. Just let somebody else who's regulated and can handle all that for you.
Yeah, that's what we do at Paisley. We are in payments, so we have to worry about it. But we don't store any bank credentials. It's called sensitive authentication data. All of that goes passed through to our providers. But we do have to create our own business logic to make sure that we're keeping an eye on fraud. I mean, the way that we're doing that is through tiering. So you can send this much when you're a new customer, and over time you can send more and more, and through latency as well. So we are going to hold your funds and make sure that there's that window that the banks want to see that they give their customer 3-4 days to come back and say, oh, I didn't mean to do that. So that money's tied up for us and giving people. So there's some things that you can do just with your business logic to be aware and minimize fraud. There are some zip codes in the U.S. where fraud is particularly bad. There's things that you can do about that, but it's really good if you're in fintech or you're in payments, you're moving money from one place to another. Definitely have somebody on your team that has combated fraud before, because these people are very savvy and make a lot of money by tricking people, so tricking companies.
I think we're done. I have to run. Is there a... Yeah.
Yeah, so any question and answers from the audience?
This is for Howard. Thanks. We're on your platform. It's Frank Banks from Zen, by the way. So I had a question about, obviously with the ICOs, a lot of the draw has been the early liquidity. And so, we agree with you on the SEC compliant path, but there's in that issue of what happens in terms of liquidity. Are you guys going to try to address that? I understand that you guys are already are you registered as an alternate trading platform already, is that something? The question is that part of the ICO process and that part of the industry something that you're looking to try to get into in terms of being an exchange for the tokens?
Frank, thank you. So it turns out the good news is that the security tokens, even if you lose them because you forgot the password or whatever it is, you're good. You're good. You're actually very, very good. It turns out in the securities industry was a company, a certain type of company called a transfer agent. And the transfer agent holds a record of who owns the security. So if someone steals it from you, then you just cancel the coin and just reissue the coin to the person who owns the securities. Great news for the industry. Most people don't even know about that. Okay, so in terms of trading these securities, you're issuing securities, I suppose. We're working on it very hard. We have a patent we filed with the patent office for it. It hasn't been awarded. We don't know what will happen. We are filing all the paperwork, as you were mentioning, to do it. And our vision is that it can be done. So the exchanges, not exchanges, we're looking at a trading platform. What other companies are doing right now, the word exchange listing, there are only 20 exchanges that are licensed in the United States with the SEC. Everything else is complete false. I don't know what they call themselves exchanges, but they're not. And so they're trading things, and those things may be securities, and if those securities, that's not good. So we realize that we think we need to integrate our company more vertically, so we can provide the transfer agent solution, we can provide the trading solution, but we also provide the issuance of the security solution. And our goal is pretty ambitious, but we really want to take that 99% of the marketplace, which is not in the public securities. So there's about, 20,000 public companies out there. 20 years ago, there were double the number of public companies, and it's just too expensive to be public. I mean, you have to spend millions of dollars just to be public. And what about those 5 million businesses in the United States? What are they supposed to do if they want to issue securities and have their investors not wait 7 or 10 years to because most consumers are not sophisticated investors, they can't wait. So the idea that you can trade them is a great idea. So regulation is going to come in, it's going to help because it exists already. It's great. The Jobs Act takes care of most of the issuance issues. And it turns out the SEC created this thing called the alternative trading system, which solves, hopefully, all the secondary market issues. So without any new laws, any new regulation, we can do all of it, except no one's really thinking about it, which is shocking to me. I don't get it. I'm not from the financial industry. I'm from the games industry. I only understand how games work. Maybe that's an advantage here, because we have to see it from a complete different perspective. So I hear what you're saying. We need to solve that problem.
Any other questions from the crowd right now? P0's doing it right now already.
Yeah, I know.
There's a couple of them out there right now. There's a couple guys I know that are kind of doing it already. But any other questions?
I asked this question earlier about the ICOs, raising capital, etc. And they were talking about the utility tokens versus the security tokens. Can you guys kind of talk a little bit about your thoughts on either one and the legality issues and the SEC issues we already have?
There's a false dichotomy out there right now that a token can be either utility or security, but they're not mutually exclusive. You can have a security token with utility features. So the fact that it has a utility is not what matters. What matters is, whether or not it's considered an investment contract under the Howey test. And for that, you have to look at a lot of things, the liquidity aspects, the manner of sale, so on and so forth.
So I'm personally launching numerous ICOs this year. We're ready to launch in a few. One you would be interested in because I think it makes your bank obsolete. But we have, so I'm looking for VCs, so I'll be talking to a couple of you guys afterwards. And so one question that I have is, if you come across multiple groundbreaking ideas, should I ask you guys just one of them to try to pitch you guys one of them, or should I pitch you all of them if I think you guys would be equally interested in all of them?
So I'm just going to say that, the way startups have evolved traditionally, we've seen over time that it's very difficult for founders to work on multiple projects at the same time. And so, to the extent you're planning to launch multiple ICOs, I would highly counsel against it. I don't think the other investors or token holders in your other projects would appreciate that very much. The other thing is a lot of VCs do not invest in ICOs or tokens. Their LP agreements prevent them from doing so. Some VCs are starting to or have amended their LP agreements that allow them to invest in tokens, but most of the VC community, I would say, is still not quite there yet today.
All right, well, we're going to
Want me to give a VC perspective on that question?
Okay.
Have you got time? If you don't want to, but yeah.
Just make it quick because we have to start.
One idea, not three, because if you're coming to me with 3 ideas, it means that you haven't really set on one, and I'm kind of thinking you're just like hedging your bets, and we do enough hedging as it is, so you don't have to do that. And then, it's difficult for us investing in ICO-backed companies because we want investors in your company that have helped your company grow and done things for you and made connections for you, and not sure if all the ICO investors do that for you. So it's a tricky one. One idea, probably not ICO-backed. Sorry.
All right, everyone. We're going to wrap it up. If you want to ask more questions, some of these people will be here for a bit. But thank you very much for being here tonight. Thanks for coming down, everyone.